If I'm an artist, if I'm a poet, if I'm a digital artist, if I'm a videographer, if I'm a musician in 2025 and beyond who's like, I want my work to sustain me, how do I make that happen in an AI era? Because I think, I mentioned that I think there's a lot of urgency to this, because I think if you're not thinking about this stuff right now, my biggest fear is that when you are ready to start thinking about it, it's going to be too late, because we're going to get inundated. In fact, we already are. It's already started. We're going to get inundated with low quality to medium quality work. And if we're producing low quality to medium quality work that's aimless and has no strategy to it, why would anyone interact with what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Like, because it's almost like if I can get something, I can get the same product from something else that's cheaper and faster and of the same quality. So obviously, I have to find a different way to connect with an audience, because if I'm just going off of price, or if I'm just going off of convenience, I'm going to lose.
Right.
So maybe if we can kind of take turns, like Jordan, if you can give some thoughts on like what a musician should do. Dante, if you give some thoughts on like from a videographer perspective, I can kind of give some thoughts on it from a poetry perspective.
I think the angle that I'm taking in my own life. So if you can learn anything from what I'm doing, I'm everything that's not specifically my art it is somehow connected to it in my life. I am trying to in some way automate and oversee. So I'm utilizing tools that make it easy for me to do those things, whether that's the Motion AI schedule app, so that I can make sure my calendar is locked in and I'm doing certain things at a certain time and meeting my goals there. I also have Jesse Eitzler's Big A calendar on my wall that I'm writing. I have the whole year mapped out. But utilizing scheduling apps, financial applications, apps that are or things that are ancillary to your thing. So like I'm a musician, I want to write music, I want to do that more. So things that hinder me from doing that is needing to balance my checkbook and do my taxes and schedule all my meetings out and find time to eat and things like that. So I've literally almost automated everything in my life. And now I'm like full bore. I've written the most I've written in the past 4 years, in the past like 4 months. Like I've done so many things. So I think find a way to utilize these tools to your advantage for the things that you can't do that well yourself. So they say as a business person, you need a team to do things. If you can't afford a team, then employ these tools. They're much cheaper than a person. They take a little bit of work to overcome some of the learning curve and getting them to work the way you need them to work. But once you do that, you're locked in. And yeah, I've had a very, very creative last quarter of last year. So I'm excited for this year.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say strive for quality and quickness. And when I say quality, once you've developed your skills and you know what you create, do the best you can to finish as quick as possible while maintaining quality, just to keep up with the possibilities of AI just taking over every damn thing, right? But I also feel like a lot of what becomes new becomes old. We are in first it was like the 8-track, right? Then it was what was next? The record player, whatnot.
Tape deck,
CD player. Now we're streaming music, but there's groups of people that love the record player.
Yeah.
And you can leverage. You can't leverage a record player. Say, hey, buy a record player just because I want you to. But it has that crisp sound to it that people like, and they know that, yeah, I could stream music if I want to. I could buy a CD if I want to, but I really want this sound that comes from the record player. I believe as creators, whether it's video, poetry, music, to be able to leverage what we provide as a human, real life creation versus an AI creation. It's in a we are our own category versus AI.
Yeah.
And I feel like how everyone listens to podcasts. When everybody first started listening to podcasts, I was like, I'm not listening to this because y'all do. I don't want to. Y'all trying to force me to listen to it. I'm like, didn't they do this back in like the 60s all the time? When they cut the radio on and the dude was talking, they couldn't even watch the game. You know what I'm saying? The game, they couldn't see the game live. I'm like, why are y'all going backwards in time? But you recognize something that was created in the past became much more efficient and readily available and present and meaningful for the new age that we lived in. So like we let go of the podcast or like the radio because it's like we don't even need it no more. But you see, it came back as a whole new version, but it's the same exact thing. And I feel like we have to leverage our humanity.
We need to leverage we need to stay tuned in and leverage our humanity against these things.
But what you said sums up how I feel. Leverage your humanity and whatever it is you create. Let it be known this is a human creation, not an AI. It's going to be different.
These are tools to be used. We need to exploit these tools to our advantage.
Right.
Everything is against us.
Right.
Everything is against us as creatives trying to do anything in this world. Other creatives, different tools, AI tools, the people that run venues and places that harbor our goods. Like, I think we need to leverage our humanness and create harder. If I could steal some words from Marcus, create harder, and yeah, just. I was going to say something that was going to be a little crass. So just use the tools to your advantage and don't let the tools use you.
That is, I mean, just similar to the studies that we've seen, like when something is labeled as AI art, people have a naturally, especially for people
aversion.
Yeah, if people aren't accustomed to AI art or already have preconceptions about it, they automatically hear AI art and they view it negatively.
Right.
And conversely, when people hear this was human created, they naturally elevate it. So that certainly could be an advantage.
I think the other part of that is that when it takes a bit of work to get AI to do the thing that you want it to do. So when it does something like really well, there's a person behind that prompted it to do those things. So I don't want to say all AI art is bad or all things that AI produces are bad, but we have to have a discerning eye and understanding of how these things work, so that we can better understand and better curate our lives around them as artists.
Yeah. Right. I guess lastly, from a poet writing perspective, I think the real key is that, and I think if you're someone who's already worried about it and worried about how am I going to find people for my work, I think if you're already worried about that, in some ways you've already kind of lost. Because I think the most people are protected already have created their moat or created their system that is going to shield them a bit. And I think a real way to do that is by approaching our art from a perspective of, it's not just your art form, like who is your art serving? And obviously I think there's a natural personal satisfaction that comes, but I think if you're putting art into the world, most likely you're also then thinking about audience. So then the question is, how am I serving this audience, and what am I doing with my art to serve that audience better and give them something that really resonates? So I think that the more we can really tap into that, the more we can actually start kind of creating work that is going to be able to, survive.
And there was a thing that I was going to say, in terms of musicians, these distributors, DistroKid, TuneCore, whatever, and leading up to Spotify, Apple Music, all those things, they have tools in them because they want your success as much as you do, but they're not going to help. They're not going to give you all the help that you need.
Of course not.
They provide. They also provide tools within those applications that help you market and help you learn how to find your fan. When you find your people, connect to them honestly and truthfully, and keep that information for yourself.
Yeah.
Find a way to siphon that information from these tools, so that they're not used for Spotify's means and used for your means.
Yeah.
It's one thing that James Blake was really, really adamant about this past summer and this past couple of years, was the fact that, you know, these as musicians, we have these people going online, buying tickets and everything, and they have all this information, but who's holding that information? Ticketmaster, Live Nation, they're holding that information. It's not, they can't give it to the artist. I mean, there's obviously legal things around the reasons why they can't do that legally, but I feel as an artist myself, I'm like, I wish I could have, if I went to somewhere and played a show, I could have all the information from the people that bought tickets, so I could then say, hey, I'm coming back through here, just so you know, that sort of thing. So.
Which is why they, you know, having your own newsletter, having your own website versus a social media platform where, you know, if YouTube decided to be like, hey, tomorrow we're shutting down everything,
it'll be
sucks.
bad.
You know, what are you going, you know, or the same thing with like Facebook and stuff like that.
Some of those things you can automate.
Which you know, or like this isn't a social media. We could do a whole other talking just on social media practices and things like that. But I think going back to the poetry stuff, one of the things that I used to have group posts I was working with, trying to just help them establish their own kind of services based on around poetry that they could offer to people, and a lot of that was like, you know, taking your work and adding an and to it. So like, for instance, poetry, and like, for instance, for me, one of the things I'm doing in my business, like poetry is directly a part of the work I do. Got my own teaching business, teaching like pronunciation. We're using poetry, you know, 30% of the classes, you know. It's like poetry is literally a core aspect of what I am doing. So it's like, okay, let's do poetry and pronunciation, let's do poetry and managing grief, let's do poetry and improving literacy with kids, let's do poetry. And it's like, the more you can, it's kind of like, ask yourself, what do you want to be associated with? People don't just associate with poetry. What kind of poetry? Are you like, you know, are you like the parenting poet? Are you like the poetry with like alcoholism? Are you the poet with like whatever it may be? The more people have those sorts of associations with you, versus that, like, oh, this is the poet I go to if I need something cheap and fast. Well, if that's what you're going for, you're going to be at the bottom of the barrel. Because there's always going to be someone that's faster than you, and there's always going to be someone that's cheaper than you.
And AI is real fast.
You know? You know, and it's real free.
It's real free.
It's real free.
For now.
You know.
For now.
So, for now.
For now.
sure. You know. But that'd be my big thing, is like, in terms of separation, what do you want to be known for in your art, and what steps are you doing to move in that direction?